Deba Hekmat. Welcome to Fashion Forensics.
Thanks for having me.
A model, an actress, an activist. You started your modeling career at the age of 16, and since then, you've walked for brands like Vetements. You've starred in some of the most exciting campaigns in fashion, just recently becoming a Gucci girl and one of the faces of Gucci. And you also made your acting debut not long ago. Most recently starred in Sasha Nathwani's movie Last Swim.
Yep.
So I guess naturally, I do have to ask you, how would you describe yourself?
This, I think, is genuinely like the question that I tend to freeze up the most at, because I don't want to be super cliche and say, I think I'm quite a multi-hyphenate type of person. I think I do everything, but I think I struggle in seeing the longevity in singular paths and like a singular career, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
for me, as long as I get to be part of a production, be part of a team like this, and I've said this numerous times in the past week, it's not so much whether it's an acting gig, a modeling gig, like an interviewing gig. For me, as long as I get to be in a room with people and make something that's like a bit greater than all of us individually, that's what I love doing. So yeah, creator of some sense.
An artist.
Yeah.
A multidisciplinary artist.
Too far, I think. Too far, I think. Yeah, but something like that.
I wanted to kind of ask you about the very first moment that you remember that kind of made the visual identity. Is there a moment in your childhood or in your teenage years where you look back and you always come back to it?
My 5th birthday. It's like really strange. I didn't ask for anything from my parents. I just asked to perform for them at breakfast before school. So like, yeah, we had like breakfast and like typical Kurdish breakfast, like cheese, like walnuts, like herbs, everything, like everywhere. And then I was like, okay, I'm going to perform for you guys. And I put on my tutu and I was just like dancing and singing for like a good 10-20 minutes. And I think that's what solidified the idea of like, this is fun. I like to perform.
And that's where you kind of started exploring that side of yourself, I can imagine.
Yeah, I think so. It's weird because I not to say I don't remember much after that, but that was the moment that I feel like has stuck in my head the most in terms of like when I started to see maybe life in a bit of more of a vibrancy, in the vibrancy that like I carry with myself now, I would say.
And you grew up in Cardiff, in Wales.
I grew up in South London and then Cardiff. It's been
It's
growing
been
up
all
everywhere.
around.
Yeah. So born back in Kurdistan, grew up in Croydon, and then moved to Cardiff for 3 years when I was 14.
How was that kind of those different cultures merging together for you growing up in the way you wanted to create your identity? Was it difficult, the moves, or how did you kind of try to explore yourself as you were growing up?
Right. So I always say I owe my whole identity, my perspective on life, the way that I interact with people to this city. I grew up in London. I grew up in South London. I grew up in and around all sorts of culture. I think I really, really do think this city is what gave me, like, I guess the tools to behave the way I do, to be comfortable the way I am. And even when I went to Cardiff, I was almost expecting for there to be a shift in diversity and inclusion and all sorts. But I was really lucky. I went to, I like to say, the most diverse school in Cardiff. And even there, like the areas that I was living over there, I was always in and around culture and different sorts of identity. So I guess just the UK and just like the cultural like mixing pot of like how much we have over here has really influenced me. Yesterday, I was speaking to someone who's like, sorry, like I'm like rambling on. But so yesterday I was speaking to someone and we were just saying how actually without Black British culture, I wouldn't even be the way I am now. I wouldn't speak the way I am now if it wasn't for not black, but like Asian British culture or like Middle Eastern British culture. There's like so much variety that like adds to how we are and who we are.
Yeah, and did that kind of also play a part in your teenage years when you started exploring your identity? You started, playing with subcultures, with different music and arts. Tell me a little bit about kind of the first visual memory in your teenage years that you kind of started finding yourself in.
Right. Me and my friends really got into K-pop. So it's I guess not like not to say like not as cool or like a niche like subculture or
I mean,
kind
it
of
was
like
exploding at the
it was
time. It
exploding at
was
the time, and we I guess grew up with it in a way, and we became obsessed with it. And I think it was the first time that I had seen production of that scale, and just energy and budgets of that scale, and just music videos, like
attention to details
attention to
and
details, everything. And I'm not the biggest K-pop fan now, but looking back, it was, yeah, it was that excitement of being like, wow, like this girl band is like their next album is going to be completely different. One of them's going to go from like the punky girl to like the sweet innocent sweetheart, and just the way that everybody kind of moves and is fluid with their own identities and their own image and everything. And just K-pop to me was just like super fascinating. Like it
yeah.
was a whole world that was so foreign and alien to like me and my world, and like where like I grew up in like either Cardiff or South London. K-pop wasn't a thing. Nobody knew
Yeah.
about K-pop, but we loved it. Yeah.
I mean, I can also see that you've taken that idea of morphing into different identities throughout your work because you've played roles in whether working in the fashion industry or even in movies where now you're kind of like a creative chameleon. So would you say that those looking at that and seeing that as your kind of almost visual school at the time taught you to know how to morph into different things?
You know what? You've just unlocked something in my own head that I didn't even think was true, if that makes sense. But no, for sure, watching, I mean, for us specifically, a lot of the K-pop groups were already formed by the time
Yeah.
that like we got into it, but we saw Blackpink come together, and they've now gone on to like take over the world and do all sorts of stuff. But just watching something actually go from ground up into like a worldwide success, that was really special. And yeah, just watching them change and watching them explore.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
And did you kind of go through phases when you were a teenager? Did you ever have kind of like a more punk phase, or how did the way you approached fashion as a teenager? Was fashion something that you wanted to get into, or did you have like a goal set
See,
into fashion?
this is interesting as well, because like I got my first phone at the age of 15, which is quite late actually for a lot of kids in the UK. I feel like kids in the UK, they've got their phones in year 7, year 8, and they've already got like, especially when I was growing up, BBM was a big thing. Like Blackberries and BBMs were a very big thing. I skipped that, right? So I just got into it afterwards. And then on top of that, my dad banned like English and British TV in the household. So we had no English and British or even American kind of influence in my household. And then even internet came into my life at quite a late time. So for me, I feel like I went from knowing absolutely nothing to having to cram information, just like cram like culture and important bits of like pop culture and stuff like that, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like it went from nothing to just like an intense overload. So I don't think I ever went through phases and stages. It was more like I always knew I loved clothes, and I always knew that I loved how clothes made me feel and how they could make other people feel. But it was only until that I had access to the internet and access to a phone and access to just like the wider resource and like the wider like world of information, then I was like, oh, like it's possible.
I can do
I
this.
could do this. Yeah.
I mean, you also started your modeling career at quite a young age. So when you're telling me, at 15, you kind of started exploring with the identity within fashion. You started into the industry at
Like
the age of
17.
16,
Yeah.
17. And when I asked you for your images, the images you chose actually are quite almost like personal milestones to you.
Yeah.
And talk me a little bit about what you thought about when I first asked you to kind of summarize your visual identity in 5 images.
Oh, it's hard, isn't it, to try and tell anybody to condense their, not even their life, but like how they feel as a person into 5 images. But when I was thinking about it, I was like, a nice way to go about this would be to go from something that started everything, something that is like currently where I'm at, and then everything in between, if that makes sense. But from the Henry Matisse painting, that I don't know why, it just made me feel so heavy and so full the first time I went to see it. And I was just there for 10 minutes and I was like, no, this is important to me because I've got it. Do you know what I mean? Like
It's unlocked a feeling in you that you subconsciously had it, but you consciously don't understand.
Exactly.
I
And
mean,
even with the Azalea music video, like this was at a time where, okay, so the context for the British TV in my household, because everybody gets so confused why I didn't have British TV. We had British TV, and then my dad was like, realized that we were watching full music with all the music videos and everything. So we're just seeing like women in bikinis and men doing things they shouldn't be doing on the TV for like young kids. So my dad was like, no, this is haram. We're not watching this anymore. So we completely took it away from the household. And that music video was like one of the last things that I remember seeing on the telly when we had like free telly, when I could choose what I wanted to watch. So yeah, and that just also unlocked something in my head where I was like, wow, what an image, what a powerful like music video. And just to be like, I guess this is the first time, sorry.
Yeah, tell me a little bit actually about this, the first image that you chose, which is Azalea Banks' 212 music video.
Yeah.
This was kind of it came at an incredibly important moment in music. I think in the kind of 2010s, music was having a complete shift into exploring darker themes, interesting themes of personal liberation, and Azalea was kind of one of the most monumental artists within that space to do this. So tell me a little bit about why kind of what you remember from that time.
Why this photo? For me, like my childhood, in terms of the women that I saw, just being in awe of and just being like, wow, these are women, like these are like incredible people, was Azalea and MIA.
Yeah.
Like two very similar in terms of the way they carry themselves, their energy, their like confidence. But I just remember seeing this music video, being like on the floor of my living room, just like looking at it like this, like eyes wide open, mouth like jaw dropped on the floor. But I think it was the first time I understood what creative and artistic direction was without having a word for it, if that makes sense.
Yeah. You kind of understood the feeling
The
of what it is.
of how cohesive everything was from that jumper. And to this day, I think this was the first piece of clothing that I became obsessed with. Like obsessed with. I was like, this, it's so simple. It's like a little Mickey Mouse jumper with like stripes, but that with the hair and the denim shorts, the brick, black and white, it made sense. And for 10, 11-year-old Deba, what a video to make sense, you know? Like, it just made sense for me, and I just remember being in awe. And the same for Paper Planes.
Yeah.
Exact same for Paper Planes. I remember watching that for the first time and just being like, wow, like, this makes sense to me.
Yeah, and it's also, I think, about the importance of seeing artists that come from different backgrounds and how they're able to channel their life story into music. And I think this is where, that's where art really develops, whether it's in music or in film or in fashion. When we share our stories in a very honest way, people can connect with that because people love to hang on to things that are tangible and they can see
they're
themselves.
tangible, right? And when I looked at these women, I was like, they possess a audacity, a strength, a willingness, and a motivation that is tangible. And I feel like I could have that. I could also have these moments, you know? Yeah.
And then I can only imagine that was the last thing you saw, and then you didn't have access.
And then I didn't have, But then with the Paper Planes, the Paper Planes music video, what's really interesting about that is when we did get our Kurdish TV like put into the house with the satellites and everything, we had like ad breaks on this one Kurdish TV account, and every ad break, her music video, Paper Planes, would come up in all of its length. So I remember the first time running up to my brothers being like, come down now, you'll never guess. MIA is playing on the TV and it's on Kurdish channels. So we'd literally sit through every ad break and just watch it. Yeah.
And speaking about like powerful women that you looked up to in your life, are there any others that you really kind of remember in your journey of discovering?
I think, not to be cliche again, but my mum, for sure. The resilience that woman has and what she's gone through, and the way that she always told me, you do it, you're gonna do it, don't give up, you know. And she never I guess she never thought I was dreaming too big. She never thought I was doing too much, and she always pushed for me. So I think my mum, yeah, for sure.
And I mean, I think that the importance of having your own cheerleaders, which are in the face of your parents, is so important in life. And did you always feel supported when you decided to, pursue modeling, to pursue acting? Has your family always supported you in these choices to be an artist?
My mum has, for sure. I can't say the same about my dad, but in order for me, if I wanted to have pursued fashion, I had to move back to London. And at that point, my mum was already settled in Cardiff and my dad was going back to London. So I had to go with him if I really wanted to do whatever it is I wanted to do. And at that time, I just finished school. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I just knew that London is where I needed to be and I had to make it work.
Yeah. You had a vision. You didn't have a plan, but you had a vision.
Yeah, it was weird. And I went to study fashion design at Westminster Kingsway College. It was terrible. I was literally going for cigarette breaks and spliff breaks like every 20 minutes. We had a cemetery behind our school. So I was like never in the class, always in the cemetery. But yeah, went and lived with my dad and he's just traditional. That's the only way to put it. I think a couple years ago, I might have been like, he was really strict and X, Y, and Z, and he didn't let me have my freedoms. But at the end of the day, he just had different standards. He was a traditional man. I was not. And yeah.
And I mean, you speak about the kind of first touch points you had with fashion. You went to school and you studied something very different, and then you ended up modeling. I want to take you to the second image that you chose, which is your very first editorial with David Sims shooting Aries. I mean, this is such an incredible project to be part of because, David Sims is one of the most iconic photographers of our time, and Aries is such an iconic brand, also connected to London. Tell me a little bit about how that decision came to be.
Right. So this is just after I got signed, like a month or two. And this is at a point in my life where, again, like I love clothes, I love the idea of it all, but the education just wasn't there. And I was on option for a H&M campaign. And my agent, Lucy, was like, well, you're not doing that. You're going to go and do Aries, David Sims in Stonehenge. And editorial free gig. And me being like 17 at the time, I didn't understand. I was like, you're telling me to turn down like a money job
Yeah.
to go to the middle of nowhere to sit around some stones. Like, what you on about? Like, what you on about? Didn't understand it at all. And then I guess that was like my first like kind of like one-on-one with Lucy, my agent. I was like, I don't want to, like, I don't get it. And then obviously in hindsight was the best thing to do.
Yeah.
Absolute best thing to do. Incredible experience. Got to stay in Stonehenge around the area and actually go inside the stones, which
Wow.
is like another in itself, like a really like incredible spiritual experience. But just, I guess, working with David for that first time, not knowing who he was, I think really gave me a level of confidence and not confidence, but inhibition. And I not to say I didn't care, but at 17, not knowing names and stuff like that, I feel like genuinely that was probably better for me in a sense.
Because you don't feel the pressure of the moment.
I didn't feel the pressure, and I think it was a bit more human. The conversations were more human. It wasn't a power imbalance. It wasn't a situation where I went into it and I was like, right, like this person not could change my life, but like shooting with these people is currency in this industry, like you get a shoot with like a really big stylist or a really big photographer and it pays off.
Yeah. And people always ask you like, oh, but what you've done before. And it's kind of like the idea of the portfolio is still very prevalent
it's
nowadays.
less actually about the brands and more about the people behind them. I feel like it's more about who you've worked with. So for me, I didn't get that and I didn't understand that at that point. So I think compared to other things that I've done since then, where maybe I did know a bit more than I not should have, because I think it's very good to know who you're around and what you're doing. But I think when it got to a point where I was very aware of whose name holds what weight, it does take a bit of a chip on your shoulder because you do subconsciously act
Yeah.
a different way, whether we like it or not, you know, like there's that, like, it's the power thing. But yeah, I think that first time working with David, and even now, if I ever see him, it never feels weird, and it doesn't feel like he is someone and I am not, if that makes sense.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think it's the one thing that we always talk about in the kind of British spectrum of fashion is that here we have some incredible artists that have worked and created, incredible magazines. I can think of people like Katie Grand, and working with people like David or Katie Grand, it never feels like you're working with someone of that spectrum, because it's
No.
always very personal, and your opinion is heard and you're respected as a person, and people want to hear your ideas and where you come from and what your story is. Do you remember that first day on that shoot and seeing that production? Because, you talked earlier
Yeah.
about how much you loved the idea of being on set and production and creative direction. How was it?
It was incredible. I mean, like, it was like the crack of dawn, and we weren't allowed, it was a very, like, skeleton crew, I guess. So we weren't allowed to have that much people inside Stonehenge for
Yeah.
obvious reasons. It's like a bloody monument landmark. But, so yeah, it was just like dawn, David, like one of his assistants, fashion. Like there wasn't many people going on, but it was just beautiful. But I think for me, the moment that kind of like humanized everything was the first chat that I had with David, because I was having a cigarette and he was like, "Why are you smoking for? You're like 17." And I was like, "Leave me alone." No, and then he just gave me like a massive chat about how I should stop smoking and like how he stopped smoking and all sorts of stuff. But yeah, since just having that human aspect
Yeah.
of each other at a work environment, you know? And of course, I think, sorry, I ramble like a lot sometimes, but I feel like sometimes with these work gigs, especially when it's somewhere else, when it's not like in a studio, when it's not like, yeah, in a studio and you're going on location, you're going somewhere away and everyone's staying in the same hotel together. And that was the first time I was in a hotel that had been paid for by a brand, and I was like, oh, the luxuries, like this is beyond anything. But it just felt like a group of people going away for a weekend and creating something.
Yeah. It felt very natural.
Yeah, yeah. And I'm really grateful for that as well, because it didn't feel like a heavy, big production of like lights, cameras, action.
Yeah.
It was like organic.
And after that moment, you kind of quite literally exploded on the scene, and you did a lot of different other campaigns. And in the last couple of years, you have worked your way up, very hard work in the fashion industry. What were the things that kind of always kept you going? Did you, after those first moments and having those first big projects, did you already have a goal in mind? Did you want to have a goal, or did you just kind of go with it and you just enjoyed it?
I don't think there is a goal even now.
Wow.
It's weird, but then there's not a goal now, but I always say there's no plan B, there's only plan A, and that technically implies that there should be a goal, but I don't really know what that goal is. I love doing what we get to do, and I think all of us in this room are so incredibly lucky to wake up and do what we do and
Yeah.
be able to do what we. Yeah, for me, it's just every day is like a new thing.
New thing.
Yeah.
I mean, another highlight in your kind of fashion-based career is working for Vetements.
Yeah.
That I can imagine, such a big Parisian brand and a disruptor in the industry. How did that feel, getting a call to, because, up until then you were doing mostly campaigns, and now this was more about Runway, and that, a lot of creatives kind of also stay away from Runway because it is quite intense to do. So how was that experience for you?
My little short stint on the Runway was great. I loved it. It was, yeah, short but sweet. Vetements, it was when Demna was there, and it was just like a blast. I remember walking into my fitting and he's in a massive warehouse and he's just like smoking the maddest like fuck off spliff I've ever seen in my life. And I'm like, okay, like I could get along with this guy. And then he says that I remind him of his auntie. And I was like, again, I'm 17. I don't know if this is like, how much
This
should
is
I
a
be
great
reminding
compliment.
anybody of their auntie, really, But no, he was really, really sweet. And again, so lucky to have been in environments where, even though the whole idea of it is that it's a serious thing, like people are coming together to do a runway and like there's crazy jobs involved and whatnot, but it just felt, again, relaxed. And then everybody that I was with, like all the models and everything, I still keep in contact with like some of them now. Like I remember the guy that was in front of me and the guy that was behind me. And yeah, it was just a special time in my life that I look back on, and I'm just grateful to have been a part of that side of the industry as well.
Do you ever like have those pinch me moments when you do something like this, which is such a, I mean, it's such a privilege, but it's also such an incredible thing to do. Do you realize it, or does it take you a bit of time to process it? And now looking back, you're like, oh my God, I was so fearless of even doing it.
No, for sure, for sure. I think every day, like I say, every day I wake up and I'm like, this is good. I can't complain. And coming from Kurdistan, coming from like my town, literally the last city in Iran to get like basically bombed on during the Iran-Iraq civil war, to go from literally nothing and this idea of like hopelessness. And if my parents never came here, none of this would have been possible. Absolutely none of this would have been possible. So for me, it's like, as long as I guess like I can exist in these spaces, it's always going to be a pinch me moment. But Gucci definitely was a pinch me moment. For sure, for sure.
I mean, I want to take you to the third image, which is your Gucci campaign,
Yeah.
which is, I think, when I saw this and I didn't know, and I just saw it
I kept that quiet.
online. I mean, I can only
Yeah.
imagine, but to me, because I've known you for a few years now and we've worked together, but to me, this was such a huge win for everything that you stand for your activism, for the way, for where you come from the fact that you weren't born into this industry.
For
you
people
know?
like us.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that you fought your way into it, and you know, nails, heels, everything, blood, sweat, and tears go into it, and people don't realize how much work it is to be able to even get to a place where people can see you and see who you are, and they would want you to do something like this. So, how did that partnership start? Do you remember the day where you even got the call to start? Do you remember that moment?
It was weird. I remember my agent sending me like a WhatsApp being like, check your emails now. And I check, and I saw the option, and I was like, this is a joke. Like this has to be a joke. Because not to put myself down at all, but I genuinely thought that there was a row of doors that were closed and opportunities that were closed for me in terms of like the high fashion world of it all. I love Instagram, and I love the opportunities that Instagram and like the influencing world has brought me. I hate that word. Such a funny concept, isn't it? But I love what that has brought me. But the second that like my Instagram grew, I feel like I started to not really book that many shoots anymore.
Yeah. Because you're kind of, the industry starting to put you in a box.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, you're not shoot talent, you're influencer talent.
Yeah. And that's fair enough. I mean, if I was from the outside looking at the way I was posting and like the image that I was giving out, I would think the same. So I just thought that, okay, that's a closed door, you know? So when that happened, I was like, wow, like as if like this is real. I call Lucy. I'm like, Lucy, joke, like what's going on? Fill me in, what's going on? And she was like, nah, Deba, this is serious. And then a week later they confirm. But that entire time I'm just like panicking. I haven't told anyone, I haven't told my flatmate, I haven't told anyone at all. So yeah, it was a weird time. Actually, 2 weeks prior, my flatmate, his old boss at his old workplace, reached out to him and was like, oh, how can I get in contact with Deba? So he told me, he was like, oh yeah, my old boss Lauren, who's now at Gucci, was asking how to get in contact with like who to contact. So I was like, suspicious behaviors. This is interesting. I thought I was gonna get like a lip balm. Do you know what I mean? I thought I was gonna get like a gifted lip balm. Honestly, that's like, I was like, okay, maybe like a handbag or something, which it still would have been mad.
Yeah, incredible.
Even if I got, I'd probably include that in these photos. Like, I got a Gucci handbag this year, but yeah, I didn't expect that. You know, so when that call came through, it was mad. And then funny enough, I booked the job, and then a week later I got really drunk, and then I saw a girl with like really, really short hair at a pub, and I was like, oh my God, obsessed. I must also have short hair. And by that point I'd already been booked. Like the job was mine technically. and I go home and I cut all my hair off.
Oh my God.
And then the next morning I wake up and it only hits me around 1 p.m. that I've cut my hair off and I've got this bloody shoot in 2 weeks. And I'm panicking. I'm calling Lucy. I'm like, Lucy, you'd never guess what I've done. I've cut my hair. She's like, what have you done? And I'm like, I've cut my hair in Gucci's in 2 weeks. Gucci's in they're gonna let us go. Thank God they were okay with my hair. They were okay with my hair. We sent them some photos. But it was just it's like, I can't believe that I had done that. Do you know what I mean?
I mean, and to create a partnership that has lasted you for many seasons, it's still ongoing. And, you know, you recently also even starred in their main campaign. And that, I mean, how was it to kind of look back at 11-year-old Deba, who like is obsessed with looking at these creative ideas, and you walk into one of the biggest brands in the world where creative direction is on an ultimate level? How was that experience for you?
Mental, absolutely mental. The production was massive. And again, boy, am I so grateful to get on these sets and work with good people. I know not everybody has, like, and I haven't had great experiences sometimes, you know, but when you walk onto set and it's of that stature and everyone's bringing their A game, everyone's got a smile on their face, everyone's just not even happy to be there, but just, happy to be there, you know?
Excited to create something
Excited
amazing.
to create something. That's when you know that you've done something right. And yeah, man, I think 11-year-old me would be pretty gassed with what's going on right now.
And do you, I mean, you also attend some of the shows, and you've kind of been sat next to people that you grew up listening to and watching.
BTS, like,
Yeah.
Jin from BTS was 10 seats away from me. And I just remember being like, as if I'm being treated on like a somewhat similar level to Jin from BTS. That's crazy. That's crazy. And I was a meter away from him at one point. I was just looking at him like, you don't know, like I genuinely thought you were going to be my husband at one point in my life. Yeah.
Full circle moment.
Right?
Full circle moment.
Also to work with Xavier Dolan, like one of our generation's like most incredible directors, and he's a force. He's like a force to work with.
I mean, I can only imagine for you how it inspires you, and it is that one of those first projects where you really kind of wanted to go into longer form content and you wanted to explore more? You know, what can I do more? Where will my talent lie?
I did a Samsung advert years ago, and that was my first taste of like what it felt like to be on a production for longer than 2-3 days. It was a 9-day shoot in Barcelona. Again, incredibly massive production, and incredibly lucky to have worked with people that were just happy to be there. And it's not every day people are happy to make a commercial, like especially of that stature, you know? So just to be there. And then at the end, I was like so upset with the idea of leaving. And I was like, goodness, I'm never going to see these guys ever again. I could, but not in this format, not in this sense. Yeah. So that's when I was like, no, like this is what I enjoy. I enjoy how actually when it is a bit longer form, much like the connections are a bit tighter, a bit stronger. Like you become more emotionally invested in the people that you're working with. You might learn more about them. You might like, I just love the idea that like we're like a little family.
Yeah, you really you grow attached to those people because you're put in such a intense situation where, you know, performing is a very, I think every production where people, you know, are spending hours and hours of making their best work it always will feel personal, very personal. And I think it also inspires you to look into other references of art and music and dive deeper and deeper into those industries. And that kind of leads me to the next image, which is Henry Matisse's Dance. Tell me a little bit about why you decided to choose this image.
I think specifically for me, as someone that didn't grow up around the arts and the culture of what we kind of like insert ourselves into now, and like the industry, not to say I never really understood the arts, but it was something that wasn't tangible to me. It didn't feel like I had access to it or I could have access to it. So when I went to New York for the first time, I was like, you know what? I'm gonna take myself to the MoMA. I'm gonna go get myself a little mug at the end of it, get myself a little hat. And this I just stood in front of it for 10, 15 minutes. And it was the first time that a piece of art had made me feel something. And I guess it was the first time that I looked at something and I was like, art is tangible and art is accessible for us and for people like us. And I don't know, just something about all those people dancing to. Can I have a
Yeah,
look
of
at?
course. Go for it.
I'm like looking over my little photos over there. Just the way that they are interacting with each other. They're all together. They're so gorgeous in their naked form, sharing a dance together. These guys aren't really connected, but they are still connected. They still feel as if they are together. Am I holding it? Yeah. The blue of the background, you guys are gonna hate me for this, but it's so EU. It's so EU to me. The blue of the background is like EU flag, and then these could almost be the stars. So in some ways, it also like kind of like takes me back to
Yeah.
when we were all like
Idea of togetherness.
Exactly.
Yeah, and the world's being a big community, because I think you and I have grown up into that world where the world was becoming so much more globalized, and the idea of community became accessible from each part of the world. And, whether communications, the internet, artists, music, film, that all brought us to be able to dream bigger and want to do more.
Yeah.
And actually, I come from generations of people in Bulgaria where I was the first generation where I could speak English or I can learn another language.
Right.
And that could be tangible to you could go out and you can create a life that you wanted to create. And I think when you sent me this image, I saw a really big connection to your movie, the one that you just starred in, Sasha Nathwani's Last Swim, because I think the way that this idea of sisterhood, of community, I think that's very prevalent,
Really, really prevalent
in the movie itself. And I mean, how did it feel to star in such an important story, an important movie? How did it feel for you to just first get involved with that project?
Going back to what you said about being the first person in your family to be able to read or write English or to make it out and access like a higher education and any of these things, with this film, what was so special to me about it, I bring it out. What's so special to me about it is that the simple fact that I'm a Kurdish woman from Kurdistan, in the Kurdistan that's occupied by Iran, and I got to play a British Iranian teenager. That for me is like all the form of protest, all the forms of like resilience and just existence. I don't know. I was really proud of this moment because again, I was part of something that's bigger than me, but bigger than me in a way that's a bit more special than just not just making the film, but like obviously we made the film, but there's a whole sea of Kurdish girls that could look at this now and be like, that could also be me,
Yeah.
And that's what it's all about.
And
yeah.
diving into the story, when you first read the script for the movie, what were those feelings that came to?
Excitement that for the first time in a long time, there's a script in front of me that represents what London feels like almost,
Mm-hmm.
but in an honest way and not in a stereotypical way and not in a really forced way. We got to see London in the sun, which is something that we don't often get to see. We got to see a group of friends that are diverse, and it's not like token diversity. It's not like let's just throw someone from here and there and there. It's diversity that makes sense and is tangible and felt like my own friendship groups, like Zeba's friendship groups in Last Swim somewhat feel like my own friendship groups in my real life, because there's influence from everywhere. And just the idea that London is such a multicultural city, but also the idea that we all live together,
Mm-hmm.
no matter what class, what creed, what background, we all have the option to live together in some areas. Like for me, West London is the best, I guess, description of this and like example of what I'm trying to say. You've got people that are living in like council estates on like little to no money, trying to raise kids on literally next to nothing, living right by multi millionaires and their abundance of wealth, right? But they coincide together and they live together and they learn from each other. And without each other, that area wouldn't be what it is, you know? So that's another thing that we've really cracked, I think, in London, just the idea that everyone not has access to the same things. I would never say that, but it's a hub. It's a mixing point
Yeah.
where you're only down the road from something that is completely foreign to you, you know?
Yeah, and again, that idea of togetherness, that, you know, life happens very differently because of, you know, our history, the way we were born into, but we all need to aim to kind of be closer than ever. And I
Yeah.
think that's more important than ever right now in the world.
For sure. And in the film, these characters, each of them are so different to one another. So different. Like, I wouldn't necessarily put them all together, but the fact that they are all together, like you say, and it's that togetherness, that idea that actually our individual differences make us so much more unified when
Hmm.
we want to come together. And at a time like this where everyone is so divisive and everyone is so divided, and you're either right over there or right over there, and there's no, not even middle ground, but there's no openness for interpretation and for perspective. I think right now people are either super left or super right, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And how was it creating your character in the movie? Did you reach deep into your own story, and what was your process like to prepare for shooting?
Zeba, she's like so not me, but also so me at the same time. She's so educated. I'm so not educated. I left school when I was 16. She really wants to go to university. So, and she's incredibly smart. But I think what me and her have in common was idea of control. And she is very much somebody that wants to be like have the ownership of the control in her life,
Yeah.
whether it's like her day-to-day, like her routine, or like her career trajectory. It's something that I resonate with her, and just like finding it hard to let go and just let the wind take you and like let the wind blow you wherever. But with Zeba, it took many days of sitting on top of Burgess Park, listening to music that Sasha had sent me, listening to, speaking to my mum actually, like a lot, and speaking to my mum in Farsi because she speaks a different language. She speaks Farsi at points in the film. So I had to pick up bits and bobs. But no, I think culturally we're similar. There's a lot of similarities, but yeah.
Yeah. It's almost like if you were dealt different cards in life, you would
Exactly.
have been the
And
character
she
of
feels
Ziba.
like she could be my cousin almost, if that makes sense. She is the cousin that my mum would always compare me to.
Hmm.
And she'd be like, why can't you be like her? Yeah. So that's how I see her.
How long was the whole process of you living with that character from first starting to explore who that person is until the very end of it? Do you still kind of see little glimpses of it?
It's weird because I found out about the film, like I got casted for it like a year and a bit before we started filming. And originally we were supposed to film the year before. So I only was supposed to have like 6 months of like prep and
Yeah.
like learning about her and whatnot. But it ended up being like a year and a bit longer. So we had to push back. And I, I don't know. I don't know, it was weird. Like she lived with me for a long time, but now that she's out there in the world, like for people to
Yeah. She belongs to the people now.
yeah, it's so strange. The past week has been so bittersweet. It feels like I've almost had to literally hand her over and be like, okay, like no more.
How do you approach when you have to release your art? Because, when you're an artist and you live with something and something is so incredibly personal and then you see it on the screen, what is that feeling when you first see it on the screen and then you start to hear other people consuming it and engaging with it? What did that feel like?
Ooh, especially like in a cinema setting, it's so much more emphasized and exaggerated than like, let's say, me posting the Gucci campaign onto Instagram, because it's a bit of a disconnect. I'm posting it online, it lives online, and I can see how people react. But it's very much in my phone.
Yeah.
And like in the...
You can enter and exit
yeah,
whenever you like.
It's in the metaverse. But with the cinema, it's a physical space where people take up space. And like I just remember being in the cinema and like taking like little glimpses around me here and there and seeing the way people would react. Or if I knew something was about to happen, I would like look back and just see everyone's
holding their breath.
Wow, that's the most special moment for sure. Just watching the reactions and being like, okay, we did something right. Like we made them feel.
Yeah. And I think that's the most important part to what you do. And
yeah.
Did that, seeing those moments, has that now inspired you to really dive into film and movies? And what's the next step for you?
For sure. I think at the beginning it was always about like the production, the team, and even with fashion, I love the storytelling aspect of it. You could tell so much story in a still photo, but then I love the idea of taking that a step further and making it into long form. So like even with Gucci, for example, the fact that it was a short film and like a video rather than just stills, we were telling a story there and it felt special. But I would just want to tell more stories, and I want to tell more longer stories. And even just the way fashion still kind of ties into like the everyday fabric of the characters, and how each character that I'm going to experience in my life is going to have a different interest, will have different subcultures that inform them and different arts that inform them. So yeah, I'm excited to explore the fashion of characters and the mind of characters and just taking storytelling into like a longer form. Yeah.
Deba Hekmat, thank you so much for being on Fashion Forensics.
Thanks for having me. I really enjoyed this. I like having a little chat. It's cute.
Thank you.
Thank you.